the leader who was added to the demands. Today, 8 months after the start of the post-election popular movement, the intensity of the suppression, even though failing to extinguish street protests, has reduced the numbers of participants. I want to arrive at the core topic of my talk, which is the study of the women's role in the ongoing popular movement in Iran. I would like to explain who these women are, who so courageously and in such large number come out. What do they want? What role do they play? And finally, where are they heading? Now and under the new post-election conditions, what opportunities does the women's movement as a major base for expressing the demands of women have? And what questions and challenges is it facing? And eventually, what role can the world community play in promoting this movement? Let me start by commenting the life of one among the millions of the unknown actors of the popular movement for democracy and freedom. For her example, can throw light on the characteristics as well as the social and class base of the present movement. For the sake of her security, let me call her Elham. Elham, a 30-year-old woman living in one of the poor townships of the outskirts of Tehran, was arrested in the July 8th demonstration. They moved her to Evin prison together with some other women, and about a week later, she was in the collective ward. According to one of her cellmates, who later shared a cell with me, Elham's father was a retired army officer whose pension salary did not cover the cost of living of his large family. When Elham was no older than 15, they married her off to a cousin. Elham was forced to leave school and during her married life experienced various forms of abuse from her husband. After 15 years, she divorced her husband with 2 broken teeth, numerous scars on her body, and a small sum of money as alimony. The court had given the custody of her 2 daughters, 10 and 14 years old, to their father. Elham managed to finish her basic school education and registered in an accounting course to give herself the chance of being employed. So far, her life resembled that of thousands of ordinary women in Iran and maybe even here in Norway. Before the election, curiosity made her go out to the streets and shout slogans in the rank of Mousavi supporters without being active in any political group. With the start of post-election street demonstrations, Elham and her sister left their home in the township every day to take part in the demonstrations. In a very short time, Elham and her sister turned into the leaders of street defenses. They tied their headscarf in such a way that only their eyes could be seen so that the security agents could not recognize them and to be protected from pepper sprays. Elham was arrested at the time when she was encouraging some young men to lead the security forces to a side street around Revolution Square in order to neutralize them. On her mobile, the only luxury object she had allowed herself to buy with her alimony money, she had films from several of marches. My cellmate, who was a political activist, had talked to her for hours to find out how and why a woman like her, whose only wish was to get a job to give her the income to rent a house for herself and her 2 daughters, had become so deeply involved in the popular movement. Elham had said that she had long ago found out that in our society a woman was not considered as a full person, that she had no right whatsoever. Elham had appealed up considered resentment against the system that had for years treated her unfairly, but to the same extent she had developed a strong will to resist injustice. One day, she had told my cellmate that when the guardies had shown up, the boys had managed to run away, and she and her sister were the only ones left. She explained, "But I can take a beating. This is nothing compared on what I got from my husband and my brothers. Human life is not worth much, I found out." In our cell, the same Elham talked for hours about hairdresser approaches by different young men who wanted to date her, or the life of the actors and actresses she had seen in the films. Her work was far from that of the conventional image of a political activist. Elham and her sister did not have a computer at home, and they got the news about the demonstrations through her sister's boyfriend, who met her without the family knowing about it. Her biggest worry was the beating she would get from her brothers, who would find out about their activities when the two sisters were released. I do not believe that Elham is an exception. On the contrary, in many ways, she can represent the generation that forms the bulk of today's movement of the Iranian people. Her example can explain how and why this movement is going forward. The bulk of the present movement consists of young people who have grown up with the system of upbringing of the Islamic Republic but have no faith in it. Before the events of last summer, most socialists and analysts regarded them as a generation that lacks political will and motive, that is, has adopted to the stern values and regulations fabricated by the Islamic Republic, and at the very most tries to obtain some individual freedoms away from the vigilance of the agents of the law. In other words, it is a passive, cowardly, and opportunist generation. The post-election events, however, give us a different picture of this generation. Contentious, iconoclastic, courageous, and with specific political demands. This generation is more like a spring pressed on throughout its life, and now, when the pressure has become unbearable, released full force. Among them, women were the most indignant, brave, and liberated. Those who throughout all these years had learned to resist discriminatory laws and policies did not have much to lose now. The story is the story of many of women who, despite class and social differences, have all suffered gender discrimination. With the ascension to power of the Islamic Republic in 1979, many of the laws in favor of women were declared contrary to Sharia and annulled.